Hi, friends. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I am super excited to be introducing you to our very special guest, Danielle Radulski. Yay! And what I love,
Hey,
see,
hey,
she's
hey.
beaming. See her energy. This is one of the reasons why I adore her. So, Danielle is an entrepreneur, and that is what we are talking about today. She is the founder of Silver Linings Group, which is a strategic digital marketing agency. And that's actually how we met. She's done incredible marketing work for us as a small business and for me personally. So make note of that. She's also an aspiring real estate investor. I would say you're already doing it. Maybe you have bigger aspirations. So I'm going to acknowledge you for that. And she's an
Thank you.
incredible yoga teacher. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with Danielle today about entrepreneurial life and how we pivot. As you know, many of you that listen to this are entrepreneurs or are thinking about doing something on your own. And it's very important to recognize the times in our life when we need to make a quick change. And especially these days, many of us have been experiencing a lot of uncertainty and fear, and maybe sometimes feeling stuck. So Danielle is going to talk to us today about how she's been able to pivot and keep herself moving. And one of the things I really appreciate about you, Danielle, is that you have such high, beautiful energy. And anything we've ever done together, worked on together, you're always like, yes, yes. It's never a problem. It's never an issue. And that's rare. So I just want to give you a shout out
Oh,
because you're not only are you a pleasure to be around and you're fun, but you get the job done. So I respect that. And I am excited to have you join us. So thank you.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm so excited to
Yeah.
be here.
Woo
And also,
woo.
you have been like a dream client, direct and to the point. I remember when we first met, I was like, I'm a pretty direct person. And you're like, me too. And from there, we knew that it was going to work.
100%. So awesome. So before we start and dive into our conversation, I'd love for us to lead with those three conscious breaths. So actually, do you want to do it since you're an amazing yogi teacher? No, you
All
want me to
you.
do
I
it.
like to soak it up. I like to soak it up. I'm like, give me all the energy.
I was trying to pivot. Okay, no problem. You want to receive. Okay, everybody. So when you're ready, take a nice breath in through the nose, filling belly, ribs, and chest. When you're ready to let it go, exhale, sweet release. Release from the mouth. Let everything go. Releasing energy, releasing thoughts, releasing worry, expectation. Inhaling, filling belly, ribs, and chest. And then sweet release. Let everything go. Exhale, softening, relaxing the shoulders. And one more time, inhale, filling belly, ribs, chest. Exhale, let it go. Beautiful. So I'd love to get started with you telling us a little bit more about your background, about your work, your purpose, anything that you feel would be relevant to share with the listeners.
Yeah, totally. So, as you mentioned and gave my little intro, I own a strategic digital marketing agency. We focus on primarily working with health and wellness based businesses, entrepreneurs, local businesses. But I didn't start as an entrepreneur. I graduated college with a degree in public relations, and I worked in the corporate world for 4 or 5 years before realizing that that kind of rat race wasn't really for me. And around the same time, I also had a health scare, which was how I found yoga. So I was really, long story short, just not taking care of myself. And I went for a routine physical, and my liver was like really swollen. I was drinking way too much, just really not taking care of myself. So from there, I decided that I needed to find something that made me want to get up in the morning and made me want to feel good. So I started going to yoga and fell in love with it. And that's what led me to becoming certified to teach. So that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And around that same time, I also had the realization I didn't want to do corporate world anymore. So I started doing freelance. And again, long story short, my freelance career kind of snowballed. And that led me to creating my agency, the Silver Linings Group.
So
And
your
over
side hustle became your main gig.
literally
Yeah.
side hustle to full time,
Love it.
100%. And I never, if you had asked me, 10 years ago that if I was an entrepreneur, the last thing I would have said was yes. I probably would have laughed, but I think the way that it happened was very organic, which I think is why it worked. And over the past few years, we've gotten a lot more into the real estate space. So we bought our first property just about a year ago and renovated the entire thing. And now we're looking for actually one or two more properties. So, kind
Excellent.
of going into that space. And it's funny because everybody thinks like the state of our world, you can't do real estate, but you can.
I
And I know
love it.
you've interviewed some awesome people too
Mm-hmm.
surrounding that space. So,
Yeah. And I love that you said about the entrepreneur, like you never thought you would be that. And I think sometimes people are afraid of that word because they don't see themselves. They're like, wait, I'm going to
mhm.
own my own business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So I love that you're kind of making it so real and tangible, and that when you love something or when you have a passion about something, it doesn't have to feel like so heavy. It could feel simply like, I want to take control of my life and I want to share this passion with the world. And yeah, a label is an entrepreneur.
Right.
Right. It's just, but
Yeah.
it's like, it doesn't have to have all
Yeah.
that kind of like, because I know there's a lot of people that are looking to do other things right now that might be scared,
Yeah,
scared
and
to
I
do it.
think I think there's a lot of stigma too of like, oh, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to work 95 hours a week. I'm never going to see my family. I'm never going to have any money. And while I would be lying if I said there wasn't phases where I felt like that, I think that the goal is obviously right to build a business and a life that feels really good for you and whatever that dream of yours may look like. So I think it's never a one size fits all. And I have friends that are entrepreneurs and their day to day looks totally different than mine, which is really cool, you know?
Yes, I love it. Thank you for your honesty and for sharing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit more about how you've been navigating this time, and how maybe share with the listeners some examples or experiences you have had to pivot in order to kind of keep
Yeah.
yourself relevant, or even just to keep connected to what brings you joy in your work as things have been changing.
Yeah, definitely. So, about 4 or 5 years ago, I built a pretty good community on Instagram. That's how I have a lot of my current clients, a lot of connections that I've made were off of the community that I built. And just so your listeners have like a visual picture too, I was primarily posting like beautiful yoga photos, scenic backgrounds, not the most advanced poses that you'd ever find, but definitely not like, seated in sukhasana all the time. So,
Yes.
um, that was my aesthetic, right? That was my thing. These beautiful yoga photos where I posted what I thought of as very vulnerable captions. I shared a lot about peaks and valleys of my health journey. It was all yoga. And as my business grew on the marketing side, I realized that I wasn't enjoying sharing as much about yoga anymore. And I really wanted to share more about business. And I think for me, a big internal struggle that I had was with my ego
Mm.
because I started posting periodically just some business focused content and like it would totally flop and nobody would like it. People would like it, but compared to what I was getting on my yoga content, it was like maybe 20 or 30% of the same amount of, likes, comments, that kind of thing. So for a while, I battled with that of like, I want to make this pivot, but like, what if people don't like it?
Yes.
Or what if I don't get the response that I'm really hoping for? And I see this in so many of my clients, right? And it's like when you grow and you evolve as a person, there's naturally people that are not going to come with you to that next stage. But I think for me, it was so hard because I was so used to something that to then take everything that I had built and not throw it away, right? But that's how it felt was like, well, these people that like really like my yoga photos, they're not going to like me sitting at a computer. Like they're not going to care. So that was a big pivot for me that a lot of it had to do with my ego and releasing that need to kind of fuel my ego, but also seeking others' approval.
Oh, that is rich. And I know because I love your Instagram, and I always say you are the guru. And it's really incredible. And I've always appreciated what you've posted.
Thank
So
you.
tell me a little bit more, if you don't mind, like when you talk about
Yeah.
the ego and kind of like where are you now with that? So like, have you been able to kind of say, okay, I surrender, I want to go in this direction and kind of focus more on the business of things? Like, how are you kind of navigating that, and kind of how have you been able to reconcile that, I guess?
Yeah, so I think it's a process. I don't think that I'll ever, realistically speaking, be in a place where I'm like, oh, my ego is not running anything of my day to day. Like, I think it'll always be a part
Mhm.
of me, right? Like, as it is a part of almost all of us. But for me, it was, I needed to do it gradually. So instead of taking like a very extreme approach of like, okay, from here on out, I'm only going to post business focused content, I would do it like every couple posts, every few days. And I think what ended up happening is I slowly started to see that it wasn't so much about the people that were liking and commenting, but even if I posted one post, I would almost always get a DM from somebody that was like, "This was so helpful. Thank you so
Mm.
much for sharing this. Like, I love that you're posting more about how you built your business. It's so inspiring." Right? So it's like for me, if I can impact one person positively from that business focused content, like that's what I care about. I don't need a client. I don't need money from it. Like I really just wanted to positively impact other people. And I think once I started to focus on that impact rather than like how many people are liking my post, it allowed me to look at what I was really seeking that was not a surface level desire, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yes, that's so well said. And what's coming up for me is like I hear, these are my words, that it's about the quality
Yeah.
of what you're posting and the authenticity, and not
Mhm.
so much the quantity, because I do think a lot of us, we do kind of get hooked into the how many
Yeah.
likes do I have and who shared it, and I know I've had that experience, and I'm at the point now with social media where I'm kind of like, it's so loud, it's so noisy. I was saying the other day, it's like going into a stadium with a billion people and I can hear everybody's conversation. So I've had to kind of take a step back for myself, just because it's too much for me
Yeah.
energetically right now. But I so appreciate your honesty, because I think people need to hear that. And I think people need to really connect into the intention behind what they're doing. And not that there's
Mhm.
something wrong with wanting to promote your service or promote something,
No.
but I think it's
Right.
about when we can kind of put ourselves out there in a way that feels authentic, then naturally we're going to draw the people to us who have what we want, whether that's by giving us a compliment or a referral or whatever comes from it. And I think that's also, and tell me how you feel, like it's more enjoyable.
I literally wrote down because I'm like such a note taker. I literally wrote down, I was to the point where the yoga content was like pulling teeth for me to do it. Like I would go take the photos and I was like, this is literally the last thing I want to do right now.
Yeah.
But if you asked me to talk about like social media strategy, I like wouldn't shut up. Right. So it's like if there's something that you're trying to do that you're forcing energetically, emotionally, like people pick up on that. And if you don't enjoy it, don't don't do it.
Yes.
Like I think that we fight that so often. And for me, that always brings up ego because I'm like, okay, well, I decided I'm going to do this. So if I don't do this, like that means I failed. But that's not what it is. You're growing, you're evolving, you're shifting, you're changing. And I think too, on like the numbers perspective, I always tell my clients, I'm like, if you focus on serving the community that you do have rather than wishing about the community you don't have, it's amazing how things open up, right? When you come from that place of service, if you have 200 followers, if you serve those 200 people the best that you can, that's it. That's what it's about. If you're
Totally.
half-assed, or if you're kind
Okay.
of like not really serving 5,000 people and you're only worried about the people that you don't have, what about those other people that are already there,
Hmm. Love that.
you
And
know?
and what you're saying, I mean, I keep kind of going off. I hope it's okay. I keep kind of going off the track a
Yeah.
little, which is what I love about doing these, conversations. But like, I think that's such a profound thing that you're saying in terms of what's going on in the world right now. Like, if we can accept
Yeah.
what is, whether it's, I don't want to have to post that, or, whatever it is that we're dealing with. I don't like the fact that I have to wear a mask, or I don't like the fact that I can't go out as much as I used to. Whatever, we have 1,000 things we could insert.
Yeah.
If we can acknowledge the feeling of like acceptance that we don't have to like it, it frees up the energy to then say, well, what would I like to do instead? And for you, it sounded
Mhm.
like when you were able to accept the fact that I don't want to post another yoga picture. It doesn't mean you don't love yoga. It doesn't mean you might not do that again 10 years from now, five, whatever. You're just
Exactly.
you're just kind of allowing yourself in the moment to listen to your intuition and to be guided and to do something where you are just, that's where you're connecting at that moment, right? So I think
Mhm.
it's such a
Mhm.
profound thing that you said, and I want to make sure listeners kind of get that, and give themselves permission in their life to not always have to like it, but then go a little deeper and say, if I can accept this, then I free up the energy of resistance, and then I
So true.
allow my creative, right? My creative process to come back and go, okay, this is really what I want to talk about right now
Yeah,
or do or
totally.
whatever, right? Personally or professionally. And I think we all could use that,
Yeah. And yeah, that resistance, like I couldn't agree more. That resistance is so it's so intense when you're
right?
resisting. It's so intense. And also too, bringing up the for me with the yoga, like switching, I was like, well, if I'm not teaching like 5 classes a week, I just spent like $3,000 on this teacher training. Like I threw that money away. But it's like, no, if you look at that as an experience that got you to where you want to go, it's like looking at a job that you hate as like a waste of your life. It's
Mm.
not a waste of your life because it's a part of how you got to where you are today. Maybe yes, you if you could look back and do it again, maybe you would do it differently, but it doesn't mean that it was a waste. It's there's so much perspective I think that goes on too.
Yes. So what do you think of, so when you've had to pivot, where does like attachment play into that? Like, how does the whole
Yeah.
attachment letting go kind of play into that for you?
So I think for me, it again, it comes back to ego. Like when I felt attached to like the yoga business or, things like that, I also felt financially invested in it. So I almost felt bad leaving it and walking away. But I think what has been really helpful for me is a lot of journaling and a lot of meditation. Because I think when I'm able to actually sit down and go into like, okay, well, why do you feel bad about this? And normally, for me personally, what would come up is I felt like a failure or I felt like I was giving up. I was failing myself, I was failing others, I was getting judged. But in reality, all of that judgment was coming from myself.
Yeah.
So for me, always coming back to like that place of love and compassion and kindness was big. I know that's a little bit of a deviated answer to your question, but for me, that's like a tangible thing that really, really helps.
No, that's huge. And that's why I asked you the question, because part of people listening to this, there are people in their life that are experiencing the pivot, right? They're either like, oh my gosh, I have to make that choice. So a lot of these
Hmm.
things are coming up for them, right? There's the guilt, there's the maybe sometimes shame, there's the, oh my God, what's going to happen, right? We know there's a million emotions. The mind is chatty, chatty. So by you sharing your practices of, journaling and meditation, and also, sometimes it's like we worry about what other people are going to say, like, oh my gosh, what is like my partner going to say, right? Or, you paid all this
Hmm.
money. Now what are you doing? Like, I know I've gotten that over the years. It's like she did the shamanic and now
Judgment.
she's doing coaching and now she's doing that. I'm like, listen, it's all
I'm
coming together.
evolving.
I use all of it. Nothing is wasted. Okay. Like,
Literally.
and
Yeah.
same with you, like what you've learned on your yoga mat, you're taking into your business and you're teaching, and the
Uh-huh.
fact that you know how to set up these amazing camera angles and you know how to be playful. I mean, and you draw people in, right? That could be used for so many different things. So like the Bhagavad Gita, right? Nothing is wasted. And I can tell you from my experience back from the beginning when I was still in the corporate world doing nutritional talks, because that was my segue into the
Mm,
whole wellness field. There are people that I met 13 years ago that come to the Bronx Wellness Sanctuary today because I did one
right.
sugar talk. Like, and it's
Yeah.
and so I've learned now to when I show up for whatever it is that I'm doing, like I really want to enjoy it and be in the experience of it and trust that I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that when we know that we need to pivot, we hear the voice and we hear the call, and then we get to say, okay. And I could still enjoy though while I'm in the
Hmm.
gap of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
being
Yeah.
here, right? And then
Yeah.
getting to be over there, that it's all because we don't have a guarantee on, when we're going to go, when we're
Yeah.
going to leave this world.
Yeah. And I think there's a big misconception. I actually, my previous business coach, we used to talk about this all the time about something being scary and hard doesn't mean that it's bad. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I think there's this big misconception in like the entrepreneurial and the wellness world. And this may be an unpopular opinion, but that if you're doing something that's right and it's your path, it should be easy and there should be no problems, no hiccups, no speed bumps. Like, I don't believe that. And I think that a lot of the times when you have the ability to push yourself forward, that's where the growth is, right? In the hard and the really, really confusing, tricky, overwhelming, whatever it is. Like to me, that's where the magic is.
100%. And I always like to use the example of like when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights, like you actually have to tear the muscle and be in discomfort for it to grow, right? And because it's such a
Yeah.
simple, like, it's such a simple thing. And, I don't really love the word no pain, no gain, but it's kind of the similar
Yeah.
thing. Like, like, and I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody because she's kind of transitioning to her own business. And we were talking about how she feels so vulnerable. And I'm like,
Mm,
yes, because you're putting yourself out there. And yes, the
yeah.
ego comes in. Who's gonna want to work with me, and what do I have to say? And I think all of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, feel that to a certain extent in anything that we do,
Yeah.
no matter how much mastery we have, right?
Yeah.
So the ability to really be true and be honest and to keep moving forward and to say, okay, there's the discomfort, kind of like what we said before. There's the discomfort.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I need to do right now? Okay, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to breathe, and then I need to let it
Mhm.
pass. And then I always like to play. Like I'm like, well, now it's the energy of excitement. Like, what's gonna happen today? Like, who's gonna challenge
Yeah.
me today? Bring it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So when we're
totally.
confident and humble, not arrogant, then we can go, okay, and maybe I don't know the answer, and it's okay also not to know, right? It's okay to have that beginner's mind. So all these concepts, which I'm sure we could talk ad nauseum about, valuable.
Yeah. And I think too, another thing that popped up for me when you mentioned like taking what you learn in yoga and bringing it into what I'm doing now, that is something I hear from my clients and I hear from all the people that work for me is you're actually like the same person on Instagram that you are in like a meeting. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm such a nerd and goofy. Like I am very sarcastic and I never wear a blazer or like anything formal. So I constantly teach that you can be who you are and run a business that makes you a lot of money, right? Like you can do whatever you want, however you want. And I think that's another big misconception too, right? With pivoting is like, oh, well, if I do that, I have to do it this way. But no, you
Exactly.
can you can do it your own way, and that's what makes it uniquely you.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. So, anything else that you want to share in terms of wisdom for listeners about what you've learned during your pivots, or anything else that is coming up for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, another just pivoting example is during COVID, as many people, businesses, entrepreneurs went through difficult times. I lost probably like 40 to 50% of my business right in the middle of COVID. And I was like, okay, I have to do something here. And I saw a need in the market for a little bit more education surrounding social media strategy. So I had never seen myself as an educator. I had no real idea of what to do when it came to like creating a course, filming a course. I was overwhelmed, but I was like, okay, in order to continue to push my business forward, this is a need and it needs to happen quickly. So within 6 weeks, I had built a 5-day mini course that teaches people basically how to use social media to run a business. Launched it, had around 25 students in the first round and 15 students in the second. Still running it to this
Amazing.
day. It's an evergreen course. So my point being, I did not know what I was doing,
Hmm.
but I saw a need in the market. And I think timeliness is something else that comes to mind when I think of like pivoting and also again seeing needs in the market, right? It's not always about like, oh well, I don't want to do this right now. It's like, okay, well, if you want to make the most of this opportunity, you should do it
Yes, the
right
sense of
now, you know?
urgency. Yeah, the sense of
Yes.
urgency. And amazing how you were intuitively kind of feeling like, oh, I want to talk more about the business of things. And then all of a sudden, here you are in a situation where you're helping businesses, sharing your business expertise and how you build a social
Yeah.
media platform.
Yeah. And I think for your listeners too, just really like for me, I noticed what I was consuming and I was consuming a lot of content from people that were talking about courses. So I think a lot of the times we don't like look at what you're drawn to. And I think a lot of the time that can spark ideas for things that maybe a really kind of organic fit for you.
Yes, I love that. And I joke and I say, look at the things in life or the situations that you kind of feel that little pang of jealousy, and that's probably something you want.
Yes. Oh,
Right?
that
Like
is so
in
true.
a healthy way. Like, I mean, jealousy in the way where it's like, oh wow, they have that. I want it, right? Like, or how is that? How
Mhm.
can I have that in my life? So yes, I've absolutely done that in my life where I'm like, I want to be up speaking. And then it's like, oh, because you want to speak. Like,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So yeah, I love
Yeah,
that. So, exalting in the success of others, I like to say, because then, it's showing us something. So what's
exactly.
next for you? What are you most excited about these days?
Yeah. So really excited about I'm getting ready to revamp all of my programs, so that's exciting. We're bringing, working on growing silver linings, which has been really rewarding for me to have a team of people that are also able to work remotely and kind of live the life that they want to live, which has been really cool because I feel like when I first started out working in corporate, like no, remote working was not a thing. So it's very cool for me to see a lot of smaller companies and bigger companies making that jump. I think that's awesome for just people's quality of life. And we're really excited about real estate. We're looking for our next property,
Excellent.
all about the passive income. We have a rental property that has 4 units now, and we're just looking to kind of continue to expand. My husband is quite the handyman, so we are pretty blessed with him, but
That's
don't tell him
excellent.
that. But yeah, I'm pumped about that. I think learning about real estate has been really cool and it gets me really excited. And sometimes I'm like, should I do a post about this? Like, I feel like people need to know this,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is really cool. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. Well, I've loved seeing the pictures when you post of when you redid your house, and it's so nice to see it. And it's part of the entrepreneurial spirit, right? It's part of seeing
Yeah.
opportunity and going, "Oh, there's a need here, and there's a way that I can participate that brings joy, and yes, brings a living, which is a gift. If you can
Mhm.
have, right, if you can do things that love and help you live the lifestyle you want and also make a living, wow, isn't that kind of like what we all want,
Yeah,
right?
the
So
best. That's where it's
so
at.
thank you. So now if people want to reach you, what is the best way if they have questions about some of your offerings, or they whatever, anything, the things that you've mentioned today, what's the best way for them, Danielle, to reach out to you?
Yeah, so Instagram is my primary platform. My handle is Danielle, 2 L's, Abele. It's my married name, Abele. And you can also, my website is the same URL, danielleabele.com. Yeah, send me a DM. Let's connect. I'm an open book. I'm a voice noter on Instagram. So if I
Love it.
if I send you a voice note back, don't be alarmed.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure to finally have you. I know
Yeah.
we've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a little while. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
everything that
you.
you do and for your authenticity and for your high energy.
Oh, thank you.
And I look forward to see what's next for you.
Yeah, who knows? It'll be Danielle Abele Real Estate before you know it.
Listen, nothing wrong with that. Multiple streams of income when you're a creative being and you have high energy. That's kind of
Right?
what it's about.
Get
So
out there.
get out there and do what makes your heart sing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much.